Hello everybody. Have you ever thought about buying a new home, but yet you have a home you have to sell first? Well, this video is all about buying a new home with a contingency, a sales contingency, which means that you need to sell your current house before you can complete the transaction of buying a new house. So if you've ever thought of doing that and if you think that might be an option, stay tuned because I'm going to give you all the information about buying a home on a sales contingency. My name is Dawn Dickinson and the channel is Living in Northern Arizona, and I post videos every single week about the Northern Arizona towns. I am a real estate agent in Arizona, so if you ever have a question about buying or selling a home, I always have my contact information in the description below, so please don't hesitate to reach out, call, text, email, and I will get back to you. So in today's video, I'm just going to use knowledge of what I have learned while being an active real estate agent in the state of Arizona. Of course, this information is going to be based solely on transactions in Arizona, but almost every state in the United States are going to have some variation of what I'm talking about today so that you will be able to make an offer with this sales contingency. Now, the purchase offer contract in Arizona does have other contingencies in place. You have a financing contingency, which means if you're in the middle of a transaction and you suddenly lose your job and then you can't get financing, you can cancel the contract at that point and get your money back. The other thing is there's an appraisal contingency that's kind of rolled into the purchase offer contract, whereas if the house is under contract for a certain amount and it appraises short of that, you're able to either renegotiate or cancel the contract. And then finally, there is a home inspection contingency, which means that if you have 10 or so days to complete all your inspections, and if you find something that you don't like, you're able to either negotiate those being fixed or cancel the contract and get your escrow deposit back. So I'm not talking about any of those things today. What I'm talking about is the buyer sales contingency, meaning, of course, that you can't complete this new transaction without the house that you're currently living in or coming from closing and you getting paid. And typically the payment from the sale of your existing property is either going to be used to pay cash for the new property that you're offering on or be used as a big down payment for the new sale. So that's why there would be the contingency. You're not able to make that deal until the other cash is available from the other transaction. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what a seller is most likely to accept if you offer with a contingency. The seller is going to be most happy and most likely to say yes if you're offering with the contingency and yet your home in whatever state you're coming from, even if it's Arizona, is not only under contract and in escrow, but has passed the inspection period or the due diligence period, because that means it's like very solid deal, very likely to close unless some unforeseen thing comes up in the last minute. So I myself, the last real estate purchase I made about 4 years ago, I did it with the contingency of the sale of my Mormon Lake cabin, and I had multiple offers thinking that I've got a contingency, they'll never take my offer, and they did. I got the place that way, but it had been under contract and it had passed due diligence period, so that made the offer seem very strong even though it had that contingency. Now, the second most exciting thing that the seller is gonna have is if you have a contingency but your home is under contract but yet not quite past the due diligence period. That means there's a little risk the deal could fall through because the buyer at that point is able, the buyer of that property is able to cancel and get their escrow deposit back because that's typically written in the contract. So that's the second happiest scenario for a seller that's getting an offer with a contingency. Now, another scenario, and that doesn't mean that nobody's accepting the scenario, but this is the third scenario, is you are listed your house for sale already, but you don't have an offer yet. And it could be you're very early listed, or but either way, your house is not in escrow. And in that case, you would have a contingency And you would probably give a couple of months or maybe 6 weeks, where one of the options is the contingency is based on an accepted contract on your property. And then you'd say you're expecting to get something within 6 weeks, say, and then you would have a date that will give you that much time. And within that time, when you get an offer on that property, you need to turn over the accepted contract to the listing agent of the place you're buying. So again, that's setting it up, and that's giving projected dates of when you're hoping to close a deal. And then if you don't do a deal, don't get your house sold in that time period, you can either cancel the contract or maybe renegotiate the terms. But basically, those are the 3 scenarios that you could get a deal on your next home. Now, the most unlikely scenario, or time that is very rarely accepted, is if you have to sell your house from somewhere, but you haven't even listed it for sale yet. So I actually have had this on my listings where I've had people call up and say, I love your place, I'll offer full price, but I have to sell mine. And I'm like, well, is it listed? Well, no, not yet. So I'm like, no, go list your house for sale, and then you could come back with your listing agreement or the MLS report, and we'll talk then. So, but I'm not saying that you could never make a deal this way. The most likely time you would have a deal like this accepted is if you have sellers that are really hoping to have a long escrow. Maybe they are moving back east and they need time to work things out, or maybe it's a really slow market, or maybe you have trying to make a deal on one that's pre-MLS, and that gives time for this all to work out. So I'm not saying that you will never make a deal if your house isn't listed yet, but it's the hardest deal to make. So if you're thinking of buying a new house, definitely should at least start by having some consultation on what it would take to get your current deal for sale. Now, there's another scenario that I didn't mention, but you may want to do this, is just consider getting a bridge loan, which is kind of a interim loan while the transaction, I can't even give you any details, but if you're interested in that, I can connect you up with somebody who can tell you more and maybe see if you qualify for a bridge loan. And if you're really interested about this, I can bring in, I don't like to give loan information because I'm not a loan officer, but I could bring in one of my loan partners and we could do a video about a bridge loan or financing options in those scenarios. So if you would like to see something like that, definitely put something in the comments below. So the scenario, of course, that I'm talking about with the 3 possibilities, in Arizona, say, we have something called the buyer contingency addendum. Other states are going to have a similar thing, but in the way it's set up in Arizona, there's 2 sections. The first section, you pick the box when you're submitting this with your offer, and it's going to say the sale is contingent on the closing of the buyer's property that's already in escrow. So that would be the 2 favorable scenarios with a contingency that we talked about earlier. And then the second one is section 2 that you would check, and says the sale is contingent upon the accepted offer for the buyer's property. So that's the case where you have it up for sale, but you haven't sold it yet. And you're probably going to send over your listing agreement or your MLS report, and then that seller's agent is probably going to call your listing agent and talk it out so that they can get an idea of how sweet the deal is, how risky it is. Now, also, if you're offering in that scenario too, because it's a slightly weaker offer, you may want to not have such a hardcore negotiation on the price. But that's just something to consider. If the house is already overpriced, actually that could work in your favor, because that could be why they'd be willing to wait, because maybe it's not selling quickly, and that might give you a little bit of wiggle room too. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what you need to know about buying a house with the contingency on your own. My name is Dawn Dickinson, the channel Living in Northern Arizona. If you like the video, please do me a favor and hit the like button. Consider subscribing. I post videos every single week. If you are interested in contacting me to talk about real estate, my text number, cell phone, and email address are in the description below. So reach out to me and I'll get back to you. Hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you back here again next week.